Hey, Jeff, I don't know
Hey,
if
Stephen, good to meet you.
good to meet you too. Hey, Jeff, I don't know if anyone told you or better yet, warned you. I could be a high energy guy. So one of the things I like doing before I start any podcast, I like to butter the bread of any guest who just give me their time to talk about their wares and their projects and everything like that. So can I do something for you? We call this thing the over the top intro. Can I butter your bread a little bit before we jump into this interview?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Well, let's get into it.
And
My next guest is a writer, producer, director. You may know him from his work on Stray September, The Heel Abduction of the Exterior Counter, Sunshine Court, and what we are here to talk about today, his three-part docuseries, Before the End, Searching for Jim Morrison. It's going to make its global on demand digital release starting January 13th, 2025 on all major platforms, including Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube TV, just name a few. Mr. Jeff Finn, welcome to the podcast.
thank you, man. Thanks, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Man, I have been waiting to talk to you since I seen this documentary because, sir, and I say this with the love and respect because it takes one to know one. You can't spell fanatic without fan. You love yourself some Jim Morrison. You love yourself some Doors. And with the risk of spoiling it, I'm going to word my questions very weird because I don't want to spoil this whole
I
thing.
appreciate
How did
that.
this project come about?
Oh man, I'm on the record as saying, I'm 57 years old. I'm going to be 58 in a few weeks. And in October of 1985, I was supposed to be attending college courses when I found this book, and I read it in one night. That very night until like 4 in the morning or whatever it was. And I remember closing the book and saying under my breath, no fucking way. And I said, there's no way this guy died when they said he died. It just didn't add up for me. The puzzle pieces never fit, and they still don't, which what is now 39 years later.
It,
So, yeah, there you have it.
so, like, after reading the book, and all right, I want to put it on Front Street. I am a former music manager at Media Play. So I'm in the industry. I know a few things. I guess I'm joking, but when you start researching the Doors and you start going through this process about, his death being a mystery, which it is, um, where did it was just like, I should be filming this. Where did that kick in?
Um, it's I read the book in '85, and then you flash forward 11 years later, and I had done research, my own armchair research all along through those years. Not full time, of course. I had a life, but whenever I could, I would, dig in. And then we jumped to 1996, and I began to write or make inroads into what would have become a book about the real Jim, the human Jim, the person as opposed to the persona. And that was in the early internet age. I didn't even own a computer in 1996, so I didn't get very far. But I laid the groundwork, and then I kept doing the research, and the research just kept increasing, with each passing year, until I found myself in 2012, and I thought it's time. I'm going to do this. And after I'd done my first doc that you mentioned, thank you, the little UFO doc, the little doc that could. um, I said, okay, this is it. I'm going to step it up in terms of production values, budget, gear, everything. I'm going to do like a real doc, and so I went for it, and that was it.
Now, in this doc, you got a chance to talk to a lot of people, like a lot.
Yeah,
And like during this, how do I say it? There's different perspectives, there's different ways of doing this. I guess in the making of this, did anyone tap you on the shoulder and was like, "Hey Jeff, man, maybe you going at this a little too hard," or was this like certain rock solid? I need to get to the bottom of this thing.
yeah. Honestly, I've said, many times for lack of a better term, it became like a vision quest. It was a personal it was just such a personal thing, you know. At one point early on, like 2013, 14, somewhere in there, I was in touch with Henry Rollins, um, the singer and poet,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, who was originally in the punk band Black Flag
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. And he's a brilliant guy in his own right. And
Yes, he is.
I was looking out for fans of Jim's and peers. I was interested in Patti Smith, Grace Slick, you know, and then someone a bit younger, Rollins. I looked at all of them as potential narrators. And Rollins and I were in email communication, and he was open to narrating the project. And, you know, time went on, and it just became even, you know, even more personal. So I finally said, you know, my editor said to me, "You've got to do this. You've got to narrate this. This is your story. You know, nobody else can have that voice." So that was it.
Okay. I want to say it like this. I want to talk about a character in this documentary. I'm using the word character because we don't know his real, well, I don't know his real name.
Mm.
Frank X.
Mr. X, yes.
Yes. Frank X. You saw how we, in the documentary, you saw how you got in touch with him, but are you still close with them? Do you still question them? Because there's a point you just asked them the question point blank. What I was waiting on, it took 2 episodes, but you just asked them point blank. Are you, and I can't say the rest because I don't want to spoil it, but
Thank you.
are you
Thank you
still in
for your.
contact with them? Um,
I can honestly tell you, Sam. I spoke with him yesterday. We talked
okay.
yesterday on the phone, and he's sharp as a tack. He's a fascinating cat. He's brilliant. He's hilarious. He's curious. He's compassionate. He's everything. He's amazing. He's an amazing person. So much so that my doc, as I stated in the doc, for all intents and purposes, the project was complete in late 2016. And that is when he appeared on my radar. Literally December 2016. It was like, boom, you know, here he is. And it floored me. It inspired me to such a degree that I literally rebuilt the entire docu-mystery from scratch. I started over to accommodate Mr. X and his storyline. And so I think that says it all right there. You know.
Mr. X's storyline is so riddled with coincidences. I'll use your term. Can
Yes.
you ever break down some of those like connections that was made and some of who his friend group is? And did that come out where it's just sort of like, oh, I can see how that works? Or is it just kind of what we saw in the documentary?
Yes and no. At the risk of, you know,
Yeah, yeah, that's why I'm,
I
yeah.
have to do this delicate little dance, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful, as you are. Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, I will say this. Uh, I don't, and forgive me, I don't know if this is answering your question so much as it's just going to tell you something that is probably one of the most, of all the oh shit moments, of all the holy shit moments
Right.
in the making of this might be the top one or certainly the top five. When we were done with his interview, with Mr. X's interview, who was kind enough to let me do that, um, he walked me to my car, my rental car, where I had flown to meet him. My private investigator and I flew to meet him and to do the interview. He walked me to my car and he gave me this bear hug and he whispered in my ear, and I will take this to my grave. I'll never forget it. He whispered in my ear, "I love you, man." And I just sat there frozen. And I said, you know, I think I was
Yeah.
speechless, you know? And then I went, "Oh, thanks." Yeah. I was just frozen. And he goes, "You took it further." I forget what he said verbatim, but he said, "You took it further and worked harder and longer than anybody, including Jerry Hopkins, who wrote No One Here Gets Out Alive." And he said, "I just want you to know how much that means to me." And I said, "Okay." I mean, it was just one of the most surreal moments I've ever experienced, you know.
Okay. I have to ask this because I'm me. And this is going to jump into a question. Just roll with me on this. I watched this documentary and you changed my mind like 3 different times depending on the episode. First one, I'm kind of like, okay, I see what he's doing. Second episode, all right, give it up, man. Come on, all right. And the third episode was, I'm invested now. I need to see how this thing works out. So I guess,
Like a roller coaster.
yeah, at any given time, throughout all of your interviews, throughout all of your people, did you have the sense? Because Lord knows I did. Oh, they're just putting them on. They're just saying what he wants to hear. They themselves have an inside joke, because if they are doing this, especially Mr. X, if Mr. X is just in on the joke, yeah, that would be a thing.
I can tell you from my heart, from my soul. Hell, I'll tell you. The ultimate barometer of truth for me, real truth, is swearing on my grandparents' graves. Rest in peace.
Yep.
There was no. It's no joke. There was no wink, wink, no nudge, nudge, no inside, bullshit play. I mean, this guy, I always get tongue tied, because again, I got to be careful of what I say and what I don't. He, people say I found him, and I said, no, he found me. He technically found me and allowed me to find him. And again, I riff on that in the doc, of course. And I will say, I get even deeper into it in my forthcoming book, which is a companion piece to the doc. The book is called 127 Fascination, Jim Morrison Decoded. And I'm looking into independent publishers as we speak. And in that book, I can really, really drill down and get granular in terms of the detail about the story in general and Mr. X in particular.
Okay, well, that was my next question. It was just like, you did this. Apparently, it took over like 12 years of filming and documenting and things of that nature. It's only 3 hours. So I'm sure there's something left on the cutting room floor that you wanted to elaborate a little bit more into. That 3 hours is probably, it may have been too much. What was it, that one thing where you could have been like, man, I could have got an extra episode if we would have put this in there?
Yes. Well, technically, it's 3.5 hours. The doc is 3 episodes spread out over just under 3.5 hours. And yes, to answer that, I shot, I mean, it was 12 years of my life, man. I shot so many interviews and so much footage. It still blows my mind, and I know Morrison fans would thrill to see that and absorb that and experience that, just as I have, because I'm first and foremost a Morrison fan.
Right.
So there's talk of doing a limited edition DVD box set that would be like, my director's cut, if you will, to get all that stuff out there. I'm not sure at this point right now. I'm just working on, promoting the upcoming release of the doc itself. But I would love to bring that to the fans. I would love to get that to them. So we'll see how it plays out.
Look, I said you talked to a lot of people. You talked to old girlfriends. You talked to childhood friends. You went to his old house. You talked to his brother. You did all of these things. I need to know from you, who was the person that you sat, got ready to interview, and was like, I'm not supposed to be here right now? Where that consciousness coming in, like, I'm not even qualified to talk to you. I don't even know how we got here, but we're here. Who was that person where you're just like, yeah, I'm in deep now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's a number of them, and it was an honor. It was a real honor to interview all of them, and to bring these faces and these people to the camera, because these have only been names in names in books, for decades, people who knew Jim, who loved him, who knew the person and not just the persona. It was a real honor to bring them, to light, as it were, and to let the fans hear their version, hear their truth, their real truth, But to answer that question specifically, I would say it's Andy Morrison. He blew my mind. He was so kind. He insisted on not only picking me up from the airport, but having me spend the night at his home. And I was like, well, you don't have to do that. That's what, and he's like, no, I insist. And then he laughed and he said, I remember he goes, you'd never find my place anyway. I live off the grid. And I went, oh, okay. And he was great, man. It was just a real thrill. He said that my on-camera interview with him was the first one he'd ever done. And at that time, October of 2012, he said it would be the last one he'd ever do. So I don't know, but it was amazing sitting down with him. And there's so much more footage from his interview that didn't make the cut, and I would love to get out to the fans.
All right, I have to ask this question because you've had several screenings. The project comes out wide for everyone on the 13th. What do you want the people to take from this doc?
Honestly, my boilerplate answer is always the same. I want this to bring a deeper understanding to who Jim Morrison was and who he may still be. I would inspire. I hope to inspire fans, whether they're old fans who were there in the 60s or young fans, teenagers who have just discovered Jim now. I hope that they would look past the controlled narrative, what I call the controlled narrative that's been in place since 1971, when the Doors then manager, Bill Siddons, came back from Paris and said that there was a sealed coffin and Jim's dead. End of story. And it's like, prove it. I've had forensic experts, attorneys, a former judge. They've all told me that the evidence, such as it is, would never hold up in a court of law. So it's a cold case. It's a true crime mystery and a cold case that has never been definitively, technically, legally solved or proven. So yeah, I hope people will just dig deeper and look beyond the rock star and the rock god persona to see who the real flesh and blood person was, the human being.
Okay, I'm looking at my clock. I know I'm getting up against it, but I have to ask two very selfish questions. I have to. I know that it's coming out, but I have to do this. Number one, does Robin still returns your calls?
Oh, that is a great question, man. No one's asked me that.
Yeah, I watched that doc.
She is a slippery one, man. I call her the keeper of the keys. She, as I often joke, she's the one who knows where the bodies are buried.
Literally.
Use that expression, or where they're not buried. She was absolutely vital to this process. Maybe the most vital of everyone I interviewed, honestly. And she was slippery. Like, she wouldn't do a formal interview, as you know.
Yeah.
She agreed to be a part of it in her own unique way, which was something I could have never anticipated. And oh my gosh, she and I, we had a delicate little dance that we did for quite a while. We're not technically still in contact right now, but I think that door is open, no pun intended.
Okay. And lastly, like I said, selfish. I have always been fascinated with the 27 Club, which Morrison is a part of
Yes.
in rock history lore. I always thought it's something with that because this many people died at the age of 27 who happens to have this amount of fame, or did they all just realize they could just be elsewhere? So I asked this question is because in your homework of Morrison, I'm almost certain you ran into other 27-year-olds or members of the 27 Club, I should say. Is there anyone else who stuck out where you just like, hey, I don't know about that one?
I certainly looked at that, and that's a great question. I looked at the full span of the 27 Club. Specifically Jimi Hendrix, the brilliant Jimi Hendrix, and brilliant Janis Joplin, brilliant Brian Jones, who were Jim's peers.
Right.
They were his peers in the late 60s. Jim was a massive fan of Brian Jones. He wrote what many believe to be his greatest poem in tribute to Brian after Brian's death, 2 years to the day from Jim's alleged death, by the way. And he wrote the poem Ode to LA while thinking of Brian Jones, deceased. So I honestly, that's not my area of expertise in terms of the other 27 club members. There are many out there who would know far better than I. So the jury's out for me personally on that. I'm not sure how that all shook out, with those other people.
What if they're all just in a cul-de-sac in Kentucky, just chilling? I mean,
Lexington.
I
Hey,
know they're just there, but man, they're just all they stay next door to each other and everything. But Jeff, this has been awesome. The documentary is great. It gives you a lot to think about, and thank you for being on my podcast. This has been
oh man, thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me. It was great to meet you.
all right, Jeff. You have a great one.
You too, man.
All right, bye.
Go Lions.
Oh yeah.